Well. Test 1, 3. Can anybody hear me? Also, can anybody see me? And is anybody even there? Because, you never know. Maybe you're all still suffering from like Thanksgiving overkill or whatever, or hanging out in the indie publishing live stream that Andrew is doing over at Andrew's Wizardly Reads, or any of the other myriad reasons not to watch me, which I do sympathize. Hey, Ori, great to see you. At least someone's there. I appreciate that very much. Oh, Jeroen, how are you doing over there in the stormy Netherlands? I assume they're probably more stormy than things are over here, which is already somewhat stormy. Hey, Price of Iron, how are you doing? And Kanya, I'm flabbergasted. So many people are already here. And Bend. Well, Bend, you opened an early beer, or so you told me earlier. I guess I have to, well, show solidarity here, right? Well, cheers, everybody. Yeah. As I said, Jeroen, it's stormy over here, and some parts of Germany have already had snow today, so there's that. Although I assume that will not necessarily make its way all the way over to you. Although probably Bend is already snowed in mile deep or a mile deep or something. Cheers, Bend. I'm very glad that some of you are actually here, because I had one of those like really frustrating afternoons. I did record the final Memory Sorrow Thorn video on To Green Angel Tower Part 2, and then started rendering, and shortly before it was done rendering, the whole thing failed because apparently I didn't have enough actual space left on my hard drive, and it kind of failed, and now I have to do it again, and that was frustrating. And then I just went on YouTube, and I saw that Andrew at Andrew's Wizardly Reads is doing like a live stream right now, which is obviously where Joe is, according to his message up there in chat. Which makes sense because it's all about indie authors, and Joe's obviously an indie author, so that makes sense. And I'm like, oh god, no one will show up. It's frustrating. Why am I even trying? And then I don't know. Luckily, I only had like 20 minutes of existential crisis before the actual live stream started, so here I am, and I'm glad that some of you are actually here. Ooh, snow in the Netherlands. I always feel like the closer you get to like the actual coast, the less snow you get. So yeah, that sounds dark. At least somewhere winds of winter are coming, I guess. So yeah, that's where I am. I hope those of you who live in America actually had a good Thanksgiving. Did whatever you do on Thanksgiving, which from like the outside seems to be arguing about politics with relatives. Or is there like something more to that holiday? Or is it all just like basically finding a reason to camp outside shops early in the morning for Black Friday so you can, I don't know, do whatever it is you do on Black Friday? Oh yeah, Tromsø does have very much have real winters. Although, like years ago, I visited a friend in Oslo in like January, and it was just like really really cold, but not actually a lot of snow there. Although, like we went to a festival, and the last night of the festival, it started snowing really, really heavily, and we made our way through the castle gardens. Because this is Scandinavia, so you can actually walk through the castle gardens where the royal family lives, and we did that, and it was after the festival, so everyone was like slightly, well, heavily drunk. um, and I did very much not do the thing you imagine I did to a tree in the Royal Gardens in Oslo in January. I would never admit to doing that, is my point here. It did, however, feel good. Yeah, I feel like snow, Kadia, is always the problem. Like, if you have to actually go outside and maybe even drive a car or cross other people who drive cars, it can become somewhat bad, especially in countries that are not used to snow. Wait, Ben, you're disappointing me. You're already struggling with a massive heat wave, I imagine, if it's like an 80 years record. Holy shit. Is that 80 years because you started recording stuff 80 years ago, or is that actually that, I don't know, in 19, what's that, 43, you did have like more heat? Oh, hey, biggest, how you doing? Over there on your island, full of rebellion and stuff. Beer, I guess. Slightly worse, biggest, but only slightly. Hey, also, how you doing? Okay. Well, let's just say that if I were a dog, I would definitely now own part of the Royal Gardens of Oslo. But unfortunately, I'm not a dog, so those kind of territorial claims don't count that much, I think. Okay. So yeah, I guess even the north of Canada is nowadays basically just melting away, which may be bad. Yeah, I feel like sore throats are one of those things that are always worst in the morning, and then over the day they kind of get better, and then you go to bed and think everything's fine, and then you wake up in the next morning and suddenly you're like, and you can't get like any air, and it's really bad, and then you make your way through the day, and in the evening you're like, wow, everything's fine, and then it starts all over again, which kind of sucks. Yeah. I see what you're doing there also. Hell yeah, Jerome. That sounds well, I mean, since you quit your job and you didn't get fired, I assume this was like well, voluntary. So hell yeah, enjoy your reading December. Get a lot of reading done. What have you planned for reading for December? I, of course, have some books laid aside. I'm more than halfway through the Crystal Shard. I had too much time waiting for my video to render this afternoon, and yeah, yeah, tea helps. Also, I learned interesting things. I'm pretty sure this will not make it into the video once I make a video about Crystal Shard, but there's a scene where like the entire fight scene, we get the explanation that Drizzt has lost the use of one of his arms because he got hit by a rock on the shoulder, and then he runs out of the cave and he throws two knives, and then after that he does have a sore arm and can't actually use his arm to use his scimitar again. So it's really interesting. I wonder how he does throw two knives, but this is not cinema sins or Drizzt sins, so I'll let it pass. It was just like interesting to notice that part and like, look, if you make cinematic fight scenes, you might want to check on those kind of things. Hey, Britton, how you doing? Sun Eater. I have heard about these books a lot. I have not read them though, and I'm not sure if I will ever read them because, as you said, like the cool kids read those books, and since I'm very much not the cool kids, I'm also worried that I'll really not like them, and uh, then I'll just be the one miserable bastard out there that I'm usually no matter what kind of books I'm talking about, I'm always the guy's like, well, actually, the books you're enjoying are shit, and then I'm sad and alone and have a miserable life, and so I'll trust to just avoid the whole Sun Eater thing for a while and focus on fun books like the Drizzt books, which are definitely fun. He is very much more badass than Rake because he does have two swords, well, scimitars, but still. Also, he does at least flirt with women sometimes, very awkwardly, because these are books for 14-year-olds, and you can't actually have them, fuck. Well, yeah, taking a shower is in fact a good thing. I mean, it's still pretty early in the morning for you, right, Britain? So I guess doing that to start the day and everything sounds like a smart thing to do. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving too over there in the United States of America. I have my doubts on the hotness thing there, biggest, but yeah, at least you agree that I'm still a kid. That's reassuring. Helps me with not feeling too old, which is definitely something the Drizzt books are doing to me right now. Now I'm like, oh gods, did I actually think this was good? Did I think this was like really good? And that was really interesting. I checked earlier today, and it has like 4.12, a rating of 4.12 stars on Goodreads, which is insane. Looking at like what kind of books we're talking about here. But it kind of tells you something that is interesting about Goodreads. Like last week, 2 weeks ago, everyone was talking about the Goodreads Awards. And I find it interesting that people are so concerned about those kind of awards because the Goodreads Awards are not about books, and they've never really been about books. They're basically a tool for a platform like Goodreads to kind of force their users to come back and interact with the platform, which is obviously another way to market them some books, because obviously, I mean, Goodreads is owned by Amazon, and Amazon, despite being a really, really shitty platform, and also really terrible to its, employees and everything, technically it is about selling stuff. Sometimes, obviously, they make more money with like advertisement than they do with like selling shit these days, but it's very much about keeping audiences on the platform. And the interesting thing is, of course, when you look at, say, fantasy, romantic fantasy, romantasy, whatever the category is now, the fourth wing one. The interesting thing there is that I mean, these are obviously popularity contests, the Goodreads Awards in particular. And since it's a platform that is very much tied to Book Talk and BookTube and Bookstagram and people being influencers online, right? It also becomes very much about a loyalty test. So people kind of prove their loyalty to their specific fandom by voting their favorite book on number one. It's not necessarily it's not necessarily about like, is this the book that you like the most last year, or is it you want to prove that you're actually one of the whatever the fourth wing fangirls and fanboys are calling themselves these days, like, I don't know, whingers or whatever, right? Is it one of those? Or so it becomes about that kind of thing, showing your loyalty, showing that your fandom is the best fandom, which at the end of the day has nothing to do with the quality of the book, which is why, for example, like, say, Sarah J. Maas will always win these kind of things, and potentially well, I don't know, Brandon Sanderson possibly will win the one for fantasy, but I'm almost sure that Cassandra Clare does have like a larger, or like a more active fandom in that regard, more or one that can be more activated through social media to actually put their favorite writer's name on top of the list. And I think that's sort of the point. It becomes more about a trophy for a writer and their fandom, which is very much a fandom about for the writer, not so much for the actual work, in a way. So the whole like idea of the Goodreads Awards is, well, it's bullshit is the point. Hey, Nif, I am surviving. How are you over there in France? How is the storm in your neck of the woods? We already established that the Netherlands are already getting quite the storm. So how is it slightly further along that same coast for you? Yeah. Also, you're right. It's an ad company. That's the point. But then again, you've just read "Sees the Means of Computation." You are all aware about the you're already aware of the concept of enshittification and how, especially Amazon and stuff like Goodreads connected to it, are a prime example for how that works. Or, well, I mean, enshittification works is the point, and the platform stopped working. Ooh, that makes for a very happy jacket, I imagine, over there with like the first sub-zero temperatures. Well, of course, I mean, at some point, Omtos Felek will come back, and we'll all have to do something about it. Prepare for another ritual of Telan, and we'll see how that one goes. See, that's an interesting point also on the Jaghead emoji. If I were clever, which I'm not, I could find a way to take the Jaghead emoji from the Unabridged Burners Discord server and probably add it as a custom emoji to this server and to this channel and chat. But yeah, as I said, it's something I can look into for the next time round, but I don't think I'll be able to do this on the fly right now. That does not sound like something I'll be able to do. But it would be really funny. You won't be here for what? For the ritual of Telan, or for like the full on Omtos winter, Kadya? Oh yeah, thanks for the happy birthday. Yeah, I'm still kind of shocked that I made it through like 3 years and did not stop uploading videos or anything. That was very much unexpected. Yeah, see, that's kind of the point, though. I'm not sure if I can do this just like that, or if I have to actually set up the weird like channel memberships. YouTube's always pushing channel memberships on me, so they which is sort of like I guess a mix of being of Patreon and the subscriber or whatever it's called over on Twitch, where you join a channel for money and then you get like special emojis and all this crap. So I'm not quite sure if I can make it available to the people or if it's only for the elites. But I'll have a look into it because it would be really funny to have at least some of those kind of emojis or other emotes or whatever that stuff's called. I am, after all, not good at the live streaming thing. Someone asked me last time around, for example, whether I'll be able to put the chat somewhere else so people can read the chat better because YouTube has pushed it somewhere. And I don't know. I guess it's one of those things where I could possibly do something if I used OBS, and I could add build the screen and put the chat up there in the screen somewhere. I have no idea. OBS is very complicated if you don't actually see what you're doing and try to use it with a screen reader. So it's one of those things I'll need to figure out over time. Possibly, I guess, ask someone else to design like a layout or whatever they're called for OBS for me, and then I'll just import those settings and hope that they work. It's Yeah, yeah. YouTube likes to screw with things because it's it's owned by Google, which is another company that makes its money through ads and subscriptions and whatnot. And we already talked about what happens to platforms over time, right? I've heard about the term somewhere, I guess. Oh, and yeah, like if you haven't read it, like it like Seize the Means of Computation by Cory Doctorow is in fact a very, very important book to read right now. If you spend time on the internet and are wondering why everything just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, it's well worth reading. I mean, Cory Doctorow in general is a really cool author. Writes some science fiction, writes some nonfiction stuff about technology and capitalism and how the both interact in very bad ways from time to time. And if you don't want to, read the whole thing, he did a interview chat thing video with Verso Books, who are in general a very cool publisher for mostly Marxist, mostly leftist academic texts, and have been so like I don't know, 30 years, 40 years at least. They've done a lot of Freddie Jameson's texts and David Harvey and Nancy Fraser and people like that. But they also did definitely publish that Seize the Means of Computation as a printed book. You can get it obviously also from Cory Doctorow directly from his website in audio and other stuff. And they had him on for like an hour-long conversation about technology. It's up there on YouTube somewhere. And if you're interested in, why internet platforms suck, among other things, it's a good watch. I highly recommend it, especially since you're interacting with people on the internet on YouTube right now. Some of you are watching this. It sometimes helps to know these things. Yeah, I agree, Ori. And shitification is an amazing term. Hey, Matthew. No, I have not read any Atanasio, but it does sound interesting. I'll see if I can find some. I'll try to find some. Atanasio. Okay. I'll see if I can find some. It's if you have like one to recommend, I'll try it out. And yes, as I was saying, enshittification is a fantastic term. When you Google it, like Wikipedia says, like enshittification, also known as platform decay, and I'm like, yeah, there's a reason why one of these terms actually works, and people are slowly, adopting it, and one of these terms does not work. And while platform decay definitely describes what is going on, and enshittification is just, yeah, it's you have to, admire people who are able to create terms that work. The Dragon and the Unicorn. That does sound interesting. On that subject, there's a new Peter S. Beagle book coming out next year, which is apparently called I'm Afraid You Have Dragons. And since he's also the guy who wrote The Lost Unicorn, I thought that important to mention. And from what I've seen, it sounds like a really cool book. So instead of all the 40 books that Patrick Leo says he's looking forward to for next year, forget all of those. They suck. Put Peter S. Beagle on your list. Also, just maybe there's a new Marlon James book coming out next year as well, the final one for the Dark Star trilogy. And yeah, you should put that one on your list as well. Okay, that I have not heard of that book, Britain, but good title, good title. I said I finished the Memory, Sorrow, Thorn trilogy yesterday, and now I'm doing Crystal Shard. I'll have to do some reading and rereading of Charlotte Perkins Gilman tomorrow because I'll meet with friends from my offline book club that I've had for ages. And we're reading, well, The Yellow Wallpaper and Herland and The Crux. And I've obviously read The Yellow Wallpaper before, but I have not read the other two. So that's on the table for tomorrow, which, give me the right to be all pretentious about my reading for all of 24 hours before I return to the magic that is the Forgotten Realms and Drizzt Do'Urden. Yeah, I feel like a lot of Peter S. Beagle's older stuff has been getting some sort of a form of re-release or collection reissues of late, and that's nice because he's been insanely prolific over the last 70 years, something like 70 years. 60 and something years. He's 84 years old now, the man. But a lot of that stuff is completely out of print. And like, yes, you can get the Last Unicorn, but so much of his stuff has been out of print forever. So having these collections of short stories and stuff coming back in print sounds very good. And it's always nice when authors don't have to die for someone to get the idea of republishing or re-releasing their older works. So they can actually enjoy, the results of that stuff getting back out there again. Yeah, I don't know what you mean by Alan Moore's fantasy novel. Are you talking about Jerusalem, or are you talking about a new one that I have not heard about yet? As for Darkstar, earlier this year at some point, I think the publisher or James said that it will be out in 24, but that's all I have to go on there. There's no definite, publication date or anything of the sort. It's just that he has said that it'll be out by then. So I'm hopeful. Hey Joe, how are you doing? How was I assumed you were over at Andrew's indie stream. How was that going? Oh yeah, now that we have an actual author here, a published, self-published author here, and also who's already writing a lot longer than anyone else, and of course Brittany, who's been writing books. I have written 71 words for my fantasy novel, and then I got distracted because I had to settle on a name, and I hate names, and then I was like, well, I can't well call him Mr. X, can I? Ah, nice. I like the idea of like having each pitch for 5 minutes. That sounds cool. Especially, it sounds like something for a live stream that you can then keep up because people can come back and get the pitch for your books. Did you pitch all your works, or did you just pitch your new one, Partial Function, or did you pitch the Hybrid Helix stuff? Because in case you don't know yet, JCM Byrne has written or published a new novel. It's called Partial Function, and it's apparently about a mom fighting and doing all kinds of weird martial arts stuff. I don't know what it is, but that's what Joe said on Twitter. Yeah, I know. I was 71 down. I was like, well, I'll try to get to 100,000 words. That sounds like the proper length for a novel. And it's obviously a standalone because I don't do series. I just want to write one novel and then give up. But then I can claim I'm an author, and that will lend all my anger at, other authors more credibility. Yeah, that's a clever one. That's a clever one also because that's kind of the thing I realized with writing is like I have this idea in my head and the story and all of that stuff, but like like every time I choose a word and I put it down on the page, well, the digital page, you know what I mean? That kind of collapses the story in my head. And that means I have to make an actual decision. And I'm not good at making decisions in general. So picking, words is like making decisions, which is incredibly hard. Which is ridiculous because if I would tell you the story, I would just as well make, choices for stuff. But the written word, even though I can obviously change it again and again and again, does feel more, I don't know, more permanent, which is weird. But there we are. And for some reason, names are even harder than the rest. Okay, so you pitched everything. That's good. As I said, I just I have no idea what partial function is about, but I heard moms fighting, which there's that. You're trying to download partial function also. Hey Daniel, yeah, well, I mean, Moonwitch, Spider King. I'll read it next year. I just want to wait for the entire thing to be out because I hate to wait for like books. I want to binge series, and so I'm gonna wait until it's that the third one is out, and then I'll read them all. But I've read all the other novels by Marlon James, and I enjoyed all three of them. I think both Book of Night Women is absolutely brilliant. A Brief History of Seven Killings is, well, even more brilliant, I guess. John Crow's Devil is a bit rougher around the edges, but I also did appreciate that one. I just found the topics of both Brief History and Book of Night Women more interesting. But then I did read Book of Night Women at the same time as I read The Salt Roads by Nalo Hopkinson. And they're very similar in some aspects and also very different in other aspects. Where, Book of Night Women is about slavery in Jamaica in the late 1700s and early 1800s. Salt Roads is about slavery in Saint-Domingue, which then obviously turns into Haiti once a certain slave rebellion actually succeeds. Both very powerful books, and I obviously highly recommend reading them because they might, get you some insight on topics that you may not know enough about. Unless, of course, you're already of Caribbean background, and then you probably know more about it than you want to. All right, dinosaurs. Now I'm definitely on board. Is she riding dinosaurs, or are they just fighting dinosaurs? Yeah. Sprinting. Yeah, I'm not a sprinting kind of person. I get distracted so easily. It's not good. Hooray! I can't wait for the audio. Is it going to be done by the same person who did uh, God's Wistful Ascending? That's the word, wistful. Wistful Ascending, or is it going to be someone else? Yeah, Katya, that's the point. It's like changing names is so easy. And I'm like, I don't know. But I mean, I've made so many mistakes already with that whole writing idea. Um, uh, it's like I set out to write a cheap fantasy adventure, and yeah, yeah, it's no longer that. It kind of went away from me because I don't know. I just wanted to do more, and I need to kind of keep that in track because it's so easy to just be overly pretentious and overly ambitious immediately. So I'll have to cut short on that. But I don't know. There's going to be werewolves in there. I can tell you that, and it's there's reasons why I started looking up details on the second deluge of 1523. Yeah, yeah, I'm aware, Daniel. I'm aware that they're not sequential, but I want to have like all three books out there, so the trilogy is complete, so I can read all three in whichever uh, order makes sense. But I just don't want to wait for like a year or whatever for the next book to come out. That's sort of my issue there, for reasons. And it's not just because of Game of Thrones and King Killer or whatever. It's just in general, it helps me to if I can focus on an entire series in one go. It helps me with like focusing and remembering stuff, because I'm not good at that. All right. And then the chat ran away from me for reasons. Oh yeah, I expected you to weigh in on the Haiti and Saint Domingue and obviously Dominican Republic stuff, NIF, which kind of makes sense because yeah, that makes sense, Joe, to take a female narrator for that. Well, I'm looking forward to it whenever it comes out. That sounds fun. Although I know nothing about like East Asian martial arts, I'm really not good at that stuff. I become Christopher Walken when I say the word dinosaurs. I was not aware of that. Although I'll be honest, there's worse people to become than Christopher Walken. Yeah, exactly, Kadia. That's the point. It's like if I don't binge read, I forget everything. It's like I have these ideas for like videos about the Malazan Book of the Fall, but it's been 2 years since I last read it, and I'm so far out of it that it's very difficult for me to actually make the video because I'm like, oh, I have to reread this because I'm not constantly immersed in something. It just like flows past. It's bad. Books as weird as Voyage to Arcturus, Matthew. That's a good question. I think the problem there is that a lot of these, I mean, Voyage to Arcturus is just like very uniquely weird in its sort of like Gnostic, weird way. I think some stories by Clark Ashton Smith kind of could go sort of go in a similar direction, but it's very difficult for me to come up with something that goes is just that same level of weird in the same ways. Um, is the Riding Griffins like a nod towards Thiago Abdallah? That because he's always teasing you for calling your character the Griffin, whereas he actually has griffins in his book. Sorry, I'm still trying to catch up with the chat. Anyway, what was I going to say? Yes, we can totally read Jerusalem together, Britain. I'm totally up to that. And I wish I could read Ash, A Secret History by Mary Gentle. I've wanted to read that one for ages. There is no audiobook for it, which may be because, she's doing some stuff with, having words censored and things like that. Or maybe it's just because the market is not there. But it's definitely something I've wanted to read for a long time. And a new fantasy series by Alan Moore sounds like something I might be interested in. Now that Brian Catling is no longer among us, we need someone for the really, really gross and crazy shit. Werewolf hunters in a medieval fantasy setting. Well, if I ever finish writing the book that I said I will write, there will not be werewolf hunters in a medieval setting. Right now, it's more like an early modern setting. And I'm not sure if the werewolves will be that big of a deal. They will just be in there because I read a book and it gave me an idea. Holy shit. And then the chat gave up on me. I need to find a way to solve these problems. I have not forgotten Terra Ignota yet, Kadya. In fact, I did make a comment about that just before starting the stream on don't kill them. No, kill the mules. Go Kill the Mules channel. They're a really cool channel. He's finally back again. He's John Anderson. He's started doing some Malazan videos and some other videos, and now he's back. And you should all go and subscribe to John Anderson's I'd Kill the Mule channel. And he's going to make a video about Terra Ignota apparently soon. And I felt the need to comment that I'm finally going to read it, which will also make Jeroen very happy, I assume. Because he's been telling me to read it for like 2 years now. Roughly. And I'm very glad you are now enjoying Blood in the Mist, Kadya, because I think it's a really good book and more people should read it. It's just so unique in its weird Britishness, and I think it's very telling that Neil Gaiman has praised it a lot, because you can see a lot of Blood in the Mist showing up in stuff like Stardust and other things that Neil Gaiman is writing. Matthew, no, not yet, because as I said, I've only written 71 words so far. I will start doing. I've put out some like very random meandering posts about my process of writing the book on my Patreon that will all go public once the whole project is over. For now, they're just for Patreon members, but as I said, like, they will come out then. And once chapters are done, I will maybe post some of them in the Patreon thing as well. And then I'll ask for potential beta readers or just people to tell me how bad it is. But for that, I want to have like at least 1 or 2 chapters fully done. I have a fairly well thought out structure for it, though, which is, me doing dumb things where I'm like, you know what? Let's structure the whole thing throughout like 1 year, and let's use like the Catholic Church year, with the liturgical year with all its holidays, as sort of a structure to hang the chapters on, because that allows me to sort of take events and pace them out according to certain things. So I kind of know the structure, but I need to fill out the bits and pieces, and then I need to figure out where to put the werewolves. What do you mean? Did I get myself into the book somehow? Oh yeah, that's a good one. The James Branch Cabell one. The Vor is very weird. I agree. I'm just not sure if I would compare it to a voyage to Arcturus. It's very different. It's more macabre in a way. It doesn't have that ethereal, weird, psychedelic quality that a voyage to Arcturus has. Philip K. Dick, I don't know. I feel like I love Philip K. Dick, but it's all about paranoia and a loss of reality or figuring out whether you're still in the same reality. That's maybe something that does kind of gel with something like a voyage to Arcturus, but it does have that 60s drug fueled level of paranoia that is a bit absent from a voyage to Arcturus. Maybe because people didn't have as much psychedelics in the 1920s as Philip K. Dick had on a daily basis. Oh, Mythical World. I have not read that one yet. I've heard a lot about it, and I think it might be something I might enjoy. It's playing a lot with like Jungian archetypes, right? Why did you not expect me to do that? To say that, Kadia? I'm not a werewolf guy, or I mean, I need to figure out where to put the werewolves. Is something that any self-respecting Dungeons and Dragons game master has definitely said before. I feel. Yeah, Chana Mieville is also weird, but it's also more material. There's this. I don't know how to describe it. Weird quality to this almost mythical quality to a voyage to Arcturus that is very difficult to reproduce. Um, so what's your recommendation, Nif, for Sandomang right before the revolution? Yeah, Light by John Harrison is odd, but it's odd in a different way. I would definitely not compare that. Although I've definitely wanted to read both Vericonium and The Sunken Land Begins to Rise Again. So I have high hopes for those, but I think it's. I mean, they're very postmodern. John Harrison in general is very postmodern, and David Lindsay has been, was a lot of things, but postmodern was definitely not one of them. I've never yet read any Isabel Allende yet. So maybe that's the one. But it would definitely interest me what you, Nif, think of The Salt Roads by Nalo Hopkinson, because it's sort of like it had like three timelines, so to speak. One is obviously in Saint Domingue before and around the revolution. One is in the mid 19th century in Paris, and one is in, I don't know, third or fourth century in Alexandria, and it's really interesting. Um, the one in Paris is about a potentially prostitute who is the mistress of what's his name, the Me and names. The guy who wrote Les Fleurs du Mal, Charles something something. That guy. It's his mistress is basically one of the characters, and they're sort of connected through like the salt roads, which is of course the veins containing blood, which is salty. So these are the salt roads in a way, and it kind of ties to the salt roads that connect um, uh, Africa to Saint Domingue, and are where slaves are transported and so forth. It's a really interesting book. So your thoughts on it would definitely interest me, Neff. But is that the island under the sea? Is that connected to that idea of that group of slaves that just walked off into the ocean again? Is that connected to that? Which kind of turned into a sort of a mythology, a part of the mythology there. Because I don't know if you can use self-respecting and dungeon master in the same sentence. I mean, yeah, you can technically. I just did, but yeah, Viriconium. Yeah, it's one of those things that I really wish I had already read, but there's so many books. Yeah, Vandermeer might be a good one to try if Voyage to Arcturus works for you. I always recommend Finch because I love Finch so much, but it's all about shrooms that have occupied mushroom people have occupied the city of ambergris, and then it's about the cops that are working for the occupiers, and it's really good. It's dark and weird and full of shrooms. Yeah, then I guess we'll read Viriconium soon. Not Baudrillard, but Baudelaire. Yeah, Charles Baudelaire. That's the guy. Well, also you might want to check out Baudelaire. He's pretty macabre and gross for his time. Got his book banned and everything. It's a cool dude, sort of. God's rune. I promise at one point I will finally read the fucking sugar-coated nutsack. Sugar frosted nutsack. I can't get over the title, but I also always forget about it whenever I have like an Audible credit to spend. I will get to it. But yeah, in general, ignore Goodreads ratings. They suck. But I think we already established that earlier today. All right. I really need to figure out a way to deal with this live chat thing in a better way. Because it turns out that because of the screen reader, how screen readers use like virtual cursors, it sometimes just like scrolls faster than it does actually read stuff, and sometimes it just stops scrolling, and then I'm caught somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, Britain, I too. Well, I don't know if you can call it use Goodreads. I just like I barely ever review anything. I just like use it to track whatever I'm reading, and then I get annoyed when I see what other people have rated the books that I like. You're right, Nif. People will definitely lose their minds with Liz Poet's money. Yeah, no, I still very much love like the title, sugar coated, sugar frosted nutsack. It's just, yeah. I don't know what kind of super long titles you mean. Also, I, the longest titles I've ever encountered are usually like 17th and 18th century texts. Those people did not know when to stop. Yeah, yeah. There's that. I mean, that's the point. Where what you said there. With the one-star reviews, because at the end of the day, Goodreads is sort of set up as another social network. It kind of becomes another place where you create create attention so other people will follow you, and yeah, for some people it works. They then make videos about the 41 books that that are important next year, and somehow forget to mention Peter Beagle, but definitely talk about a lot of books because of their covers. I do see that. And yeah, putting out one-star reviews is a quick way to do that. That's like another thing, right? It's like writing really shitty reviews or like really negative reviews is oftentimes much easier than writing either a nuanced review or a raving review. Like being a dick to a book is very easy. It can be fun. Don't get me wrong; it can be really fun to just like dunk on something, and it's fun to read those kind of things. Oftentimes, it's more fun than reading positive reviews. Um, that probably says something about human nature that I don't want to examine today, but I'm pretty sure there is something there. And yeah, it obviously does not necessarily lead to that platform becoming a place where you can discover new books afterwards. But then again, I don't think Goodreads ever was a platform to discover good books, because at the end of the day, Amazon, who own that platform and use it obviously to sell books, they don't care if you buy good books or bad books. They care that you buy books. So the idea of it actually helping anyone to find what they're looking for or whatever is just not there. Hey Jared, I don't know what you missed. Us talking about sugar frosted nutsacks, definitely. Me saying that I need to figure out where to put the werewolves, which apparently some people don't understand is something that anyone who has ever played Dungeons and Dragons or run a Dungeons and Dragons campaign has definitely said or thought before. Um, Beyond that, I don't know. Not much, I guess. How are you doing today? Wait, the Communist Manifesto has a worse rating than The Crystal Shard by R.A. Salvatore. That's a shame, because I can tell you that the Communist Manifesto definitely has much more enthralling prose. It's much better from like a rhetorical standpoint than The Crystal Shard. The Slow Regard of Silent Things. I have no idea who J.G. Keeley is. I've never heard of them. As I said, I don't properly use Goodreads. I don't read reviews or anything of the sorts. Ooh, the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of that one is a really fun story, and it kind of ends in with him being swallowed in the hollow earth. It's a really cool story. One of the weirder Edgar Allan Poe stories. almost like I wouldn't call it a novel, but it's definitely novella length. Might be the longest thing Poe ever wrote. Have you sent me some? Oh wait, that's the guy with the world building stuff, right? Then I have read his blog, and it was good. He got into a fight with R. Scott Baker and won, which is good. I love Jack Vance. Just for that kind of stuff. I just generally love Jack Vance, and I wish more people would read more Jack Vance. Just because he's so uniquely cool and weird. Nice. Was that like a live stream, or was that a recorded collaboration thing? The conversation about Philip K. Dick and androids. I don't know. Also, I feel like once after the next full-on apocalypse, people will be trudging through the sludge piles of our civilization, and I'm pretty sure they'll find more really bad copies of Drizzt novels than they find copies of the Communist Manifesto. If only because of all those like early '90s paperbacks being printed on such really, really terrible chemically, paper that they consist of like chemical weapons in their own right. So probably they'll not die out. And you can just like, it's a bit like that Futurama episode with the whole like dirt and like trash meteor, and they find the Bart Simpsons puppets and stuff in there when they go there. I think that's where you'll find the Drizzt novels from the early '90s, just because the paper quality is so insanely chemical. I have not read the Endurance Shackleton's voyage. I obviously know about Shackleton, but I have not read that book. The Demon Princess. I did like some of them. They're not my favorite Jack Vance, but they have some really cool bits and pieces in there. And I just like generally love Vance's style of writing prose, of telling a story, even like in Planet of Adventure, which, and I need to say this again, has one book that is called Servants of the Wank, and yes, it's spelled exactly that way, and I'm almost sure that Vance did that on purpose, but only almost sure, because it's also like written in the 1950s or 60s, and I'm not old enough to know what they called it back then. It's a very weird like sci-fi adventure story of that guy being stranded on a planet, and he has to go back, and there's like these 4 different alien species: the Dirter, the Wank, the Noom, and called Kath or something like that. Cash and Cash, and they're all weird, and he has to overcome one in each of the books. He obviously also gets because this is like still the 1950s or 60s, so he hooks up with one of the alien girls and stuff. Yes, Gormenghast is definitely I wouldn't call it fun, but it's certainly great. It has some connection, I think, to like stuff like the Vor, but it's different, definitely. But I mean, I'm glad you're reading it. It's well worth a read, and more people should read Gormenghast. Nice. So did you just talk about Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, or did you talk about other Philip K. Dick books as well? Yeah, the Cash. Yes, Britain, the Wank. I think it was renamed in later printings because someone realized that you can't sell a book called Servants of the Wank to teenage boys, because they might actually get the joke, I guess. So I don't know what went on there. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is a good book. It's a very good book. It's very different from Gorman Gas, though. I'll let you know. I'll tell you that one. But both worth reading, definitely. I mean, really, really good books. Yeah, yeah. As I said, like Sermons of the Wank, definitely. That was a choice. And I kind of see why some of them tried to rename it in Vanek because this was still America. I mean, I can see this not being like an issue in, say, Ireland or possibly Australia. Yeah. No, the essays on world building by Keeley that also sent me, they were really interesting. I did learn some things. I did actually agree with him on most of the things. And the altercation he had with R. Scott Baker was definitely interesting. And Baker did not come off as a not off as as smart as I hoped he would. All right. So, what else should we talk about, and do we need to cover? Because I feel I've reached the end of the chat for now. After being very much overtaken by it for a while there. Now it's trying to tell me, get me to use all kinds of weird emojis, but obviously not a jackhut, because this is not yet a cool YouTube chat. Well, like that's an interesting thing. Like, obviously, I made fun of the 41 books list, and talked about Peter Beagle. But do you have like other things you're looking forward to for next year? Because I'm really bad at at doing lists of releases or anything. I have no idea what's coming out next year. I was already completely overwhelmed with the question by Matt's fantasy book reviews for my favorite fantasy or sci-fi book of 2023, and I'm like, I read 3 that count as fantasy or sci-fi. I've read 3 books of that. Clearly, I'm doing something wrong there. Look, The Servants of the Wank is just an adventure story on a planet. And there's some aliens called Wank. They're very tough-skinned underwater creatures, if I remember correctly. Because I think that's sort of the thing. You have the Cash. They are sort of insectile, if I remember, and they fly around with stuff. And then you have the Dirter, who run this sort of open air arena where they go and just hunt humans or hunt just about everyone, I guess. And then you have the Wank that are sort of do have that underwater stuff, and then you have the Noom who do have tunnels in the planet and are sort of underground creatures. I think, and we don't even want to know why they all understand each other. It's not that kind of book. I mean, technically, there are 4 novels or 4 books at least. Well, I mean, Matt specifically asked for 2023 releases, so I'll stick to that. I'll play by the rules. It just means that I've read The Destroyer of Worlds by Matt Ruff, which wasn't as good as I hoped for. I read The Circumference of the World by Lavi Tidar, which is fun. I really enjoyed that. And I read Hopeland by Ian MacDonald, which obviously no one read because no one ever reads, or no one on social media ever reads Ian MacDonald novels, which is bad, and more people should do it. But that's just the world we live in. So I guess I'll have to settle for Hopeland, unless I decide to read one more 2023 release until next week when the deadline ends. Oh, three by the same author? Which? Oh, yeah, right. Philip Chase. Silly of me to ask. See, that's the trick. Also, you could totally get away with this for a while, because who knows what books came out in the 1960s? You can talk about the hotness that is Roger Zelazny and Fritz Lieber, and plus the 1960s had some really cool fantasy and sci-fi stuff, because the general like genre borders weren't as strictly policed. You get to read some of the stuff Michael Moorcock put out, or Michael Moorcock put out as editor for whatever the magazine was that he worked for. Was it New Worlds? Maybe New Worlds. You know what I mean? Some J.G. Ballard. There's some crazy shit in the 60s and 70s. You can, Ayn Rand. There, there's an amazing quote from Corey Robin that I usually drop in these regards. Corey Robin, amazing thinker, wrote The Reactionary Mind, on conservatism from Edmund Burke to Donald Trump, and it's a really good book, and you should go and read it. And he has this wonderful quote on Ayn Rand, which is like, St. Petersburg during the revolution gave us Vladimir Nabokov, Isaiah Berlin, and Ayn Rand. One was a novelist, one was a philosopher, one was neither but thought she was both. And that does, in fact, very much sum up my thoughts on Ayn Rand. She's terrible. Oh, right, that one, Jeroen. Good. I had that in the back of my mind. It's like there was this one thing that was at least on the shortlist for the Booker, long list shortlist for the Booker. I should probably read that one. Hopeland was amazing. Obviously, I think my favorite novel release of 2023 is either Adama by Lavi Tidar or Meanwood by Nicola Griffith, but they're not fantasy or sci-fi, so they don't count for my the collab thing. A Stroke of the Pen. That's part of the Terry Pratchett nonfiction collection, right? The essay stuff, the Pratchett stuff. He's got like two of those. There's A Slip of the Keyboard and Stroke of the Pen, I think. And I haven't read either one. What makes you say that, Britton? That you had a feeling that I wouldn't like Ayn Rand that much? I have created I have created the cape of objectivity. I'm pretty sure I can out objectivize Ayn Rand at this point. No, so yeah, no, I have not read the Terry Pratchett nonfiction stuff yet. I'm not even sure I want to, because I feel I adore Pratchett as a writer, and I think I might not really enjoy his nonfiction stuff. But at some point I'll definitely go and read it, because it's Terry Pratchett, and there's definitely look, there's no world in which I don't read anything Pratchett has ever done at some point. Um, there was a new like Wolf short story collection. I haven't read that one, of course, yet. But yeah, I mean, obviously that will be good because it's Gene Wolfe, and he kind of knew how to write stories, or at least stories that I personally really enjoy, which is not necessarily the same thing. Um, yeah. As I said, like I'm rarely aware of like what are new releases. I'm just really bad at keeping up with new releases. I have that whole what's it, Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty on my sort of, hey, this sounds cool because pirate ladies sound cool thing, and then everyone stopped talking about it once it came out, and I'm like, I don't know what happened to this book. I forgot about it. Yeah, I saw that Fall of Numenor thing, and I was wondering whether it's actually new text, like re-edited text, or if it's stuff that's just part of the Silmarillion. I didn't check it out yet. No, I did not like Jordan's video about art. I think he doesn't know what he's talking about. Is my point. I mean, obviously, I don't want to do drama with other booktubers, but sometimes some people are just full of shit. Titanium Noir. That sounds really cool. That sounds really cool as a title. I love that. I've never read any Nick Harkaway there though, so maybe. I haven't read any Chakraborty because everyone loved her books, and I'm whenever something gets popular on BookTube, I just stop talking about it. Ah, so those are the stuff he did as when he was like a newspaper editor, maybe. I don't know. In that case, I'll definitely check it out very soon because it's Terry Pratchett. He does not call himself an objectivist, but I've watched his his bookshelf tour, and it includes 3 novels by Ayn Rand. So he does not only show off both Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, but also Anthem and a biography. And then he says that Thomas Sowell's book on economy is the only book is the book where he learned everything he knows about economy, and that, yeah, no. No, at some point, discourse is not an option because, like, you can read conservative economists and all kinds of stuff, and it's fine. But to go, no matter what authors, like, this is where I learned all I know about economies. Either you're claiming that's all you need to know about economy, or you're claiming that you're uninformed, and it didn't sound like I'm uninformed. I know objectivism doesn't make any sense as a philosophy. It's just bullshit, and that's kind of part of the problem. And you look at like Ayn Rand's life. Few people have ever been as hypocritical as Ayn Rand, because all the stuff she did before she came to the US, all of the sort of culture she actually got to, theater and all that stuff, she all owed to, social welfare and stuff from the state. And then she goes like, oh, it's all done by our own will. And it's like, no, it's not. Yeah, of course it's not good as a narrative. I was just wondering if it's something I already had, or if it's something I could, there's any value for me in there. I mean, I did very much enjoy the Christopher Tolkien re-edit thing of The Children of Húrin and The Fall of Gondolin and Baron Luthien. Those editions of the last couple of years, I did very much enjoy as new editions, even though technically there's nothing really new in there as well. Although with Baron Luthien, you learn about Tevildo, Prince of Cats, which, If you haven't read that one yet, Kadia, you might want to check it out. It's Baron and Luthien, but it has also cats. They're evil, though. I should probably just mention that. Jordan is iWizard. He made a video about how art can actually be objective, which was not very good. I don't burn. Wait. Of course I do. yeah, Joe. You're summing it up very well. All right. See you around your own. Yeah, that's kind of the point. Also, it's like you can obviously explain why Ayn Rand ended up where she ended up with all the stuff she did and so forth, but does not excuse the stuff she wrote and how people turned the stuff she wrote into whatever the hell it is they turn it into these days, and that's kind of the point. It's like that's kind of the problem there. And we've reached once again the point where I need to get the chat thing sorted out. Seriously. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about that iWizard stuff because on the other hand, I guess no one will ever invite me except Britain. Will invite me on their YouTube collabs anymore anyway. So I can just go burning some more bridges because bridge burning is fun. But I don't know. I think it's sort of the problem I have with a lot of these things on booktube is that we're talking about books. Books do have a level of they're more just just entertainment. And when you make claims about art and meaning and stuff like that, they're the responsibility that comes with that. And that's kind of why some of these things sometimes make me angry, because suddenly you're sort of pushing attitudes that are actually harmful. And when it comes to libertarian, especially Rantian libertarianism, that kind of stuff is actively harmful to a lot of people. And yeah, don't like that. The book is obviously Baron and Luthien by J.R.R. Tolkien, edited by Christopher Tolkien. It's, different versions of the Baron and Luthien story, and one version of those does include Tevildo, Prince of Cats. He's a giant cat. And there's a really cute drawing illustration that Tolkien drew himself, and he's a giant cat. Yeah, exactly what Joe said. Like all art is necessarily political in some form or other. There's obviously books and texts that are more overtly, more explicitly political than others, but of course that stuff kind of comes through. Well, yeah, get something to eat. We don't want you to faint out of hunger, Britain. That's not healthy. I have not heard him talk about the Übermensch, but in my experience, 95% of all people misinterpret what Nietzsche meant by Übermensch. So there's that. And people who you know, agree with Ayn Rand. I would say 99.9% of people who agree with Ayn Rand will probably misinterpret Friedrich Nietzsche. It was probably my most well-researched, well, not researched, but well prepared video I ever did. Was the response to the I Wizard thing, because I went through his video again, like sentence by sentence, and wrote down comments and notes and stuff to make sure that I get every part of his argument, so I can then go about like why I think the argument was wrong. It felt like it was back in fucking university here. Yeah, reading Nietzsche with 19, although 15 is even more dangerous, I would say, but yeah. It's Nietzsche's difficult in that regard. I would not say that I understand Nietzsche fully, but I think especially the concept of Übermensch is very easy to misunderstand and get the wrong ideas if you're, you know, edgy and 15 and stuff like that. It's sad. And but you know, the politics stuff is like, of course, like for me, I'm a very political person, and it will always bleed into my interpretation. But that's once again the point, right? It's like I read a book, and that's me reading that book in that very specific situation. So it will be read through my very specific political lens at that point. And me not mentioning that would be dishonest if I talk about the book, because it's in there somewhere, because I could take it out of there. And it's something that I found really interesting now that I was rereading the Memory, Sorrow, Thorn books by Ted Williams, and very much comparing them, obviously, to Tolkien. Ted Williams, or like that first Ostenar trilogy in 4 books, is so very much an American book. It's very interesting, like the way it does things. You can tell Williams is an American and Tolkien was British. Their attitude to to natives, to empire, stuff like that, it kind of bleeds in and it kind of bleeds through, and it's sort of what makes these books unique and makes them interesting in a way as well. Nif, that is a very admirable. I really appreciate that you did not turn into a reactionary. There is a very big danger, though, of exactly that happening for reasons. Yeah, and Daniel, and if I agree, I try to. I know I certainly got into a bit of a kerfuffle yesterday on a Discord server when I was talking about something, and someone was making snide comments about me pretending that my opinions are facts, and I'm like, well, you're a booktuber too, right? um, I try to at least find arguments for, you know, or like sort of back up my arguments in a way. But yeah, these are opinions. And I would say, at least in some regards, not in every field, but there are some fields where I feel somewhat confident to, well, not call myself an authority, but definitely to call myself someone who has, you know, some background in certain fields, so I can talk about that. Parts of that are definitely fantasy literature, because when it comes to the history of fantasy, I've definitely read more than some other people that make very, very clear factual statements on books. Yeah, DK. That's very much the point. Like, in general, you will never fully understand philosophers. That's just not possible. The point is, you go back to those authors again and again and again. You try to make sense, and questioning your own reading is the key, I think. Yeah, that's a very good point there, Joe. Free will is, in fact, very terrifying. The problem is, of course, that you have some people go like, yeah, it's terrifying, and you have to be a very smart person like me to even accept the fact there is free will and accept your free will. And then, well, and then R. Scott Baker comes around the corner and goes like, hey, you don't have free will. It's all pre-programmed. And that's the very specific knowledge I have because I am the neuropath. And I don't know what happens then because I have not read the book. I don't need to. No one ever picks fights with me on Britain. I feel no one ever wants to. They just like ignore me because I'm the I'm the mad screaming uncle at the booktube party. I'm the guy who gets ignored. I know he likes to poke, but he's done poking a lot, and it kind of annoys me because it's it's stupid. Anyway, my point is that yes, of course, just by the mere idea of being on screen while you are on the other side of the screen, I turn into something of an authority whether I want to or not. I sincerely hope that no one is taking me as an authority as such. Is constantly you're constantly questioning whatever I say. I really hope so. And then you can yell at me or start your own channels and yell at me. That would be like the perfect way to do it. I think the problem with authority is that we build it up, we question, or not question it, but we sort of, a lot of us are very critical of authority, as we should be, but a reflexive, just, be ignoring authority or ignoring perceived authority out of a reflex is just as bad, because that leaves you open to the same kind of problem, because suddenly you're doing the opposite just because an authority says it. It's a mess and it's complicated. I just wish that people would, I don't know, take books more seriously, and not fall back on those very few building blocks that everyone uses to talk about literature or fantasy literature on social media, when it's basically a few quantifiable things. You have, your magic system, your world building, your character work. No one ever explains what character works means because no one has the vocabulary for that. But they're like, the character work was brilliant in this book. It's like, I don't know. I've heard people say that about Drisdor, and I've heard people say that about Fitz in the Farseer books. So you need to say something more for me to understand what you mean by character work, because Drizzt and Fitz are not the same kind of character, and their description is very different. And I don't know. I just feel that we kind of use phrases and stuff like they are categories we understand, and then we just like apply ratings and go like, this character work is somewhere between 1 and 5 stars. And like, what does that mean? We don't know. World building is somewhere between 1 and 5 stars. What does that mean? We don't know. The magic system is somewhere between 1 and 5 stars. We don't know. Because there's no way to actually do that unless you go into into individual details. And once you do that, you can no longer compare things. You can no longer do the rating stuff. But we want to do the rating stuff because the rating stuff is easy, it's understandable in a world where everything is about competition and everything is about rating and ranking stuff and being the best at everything. You need numbers. You need to quantify stuff. It's it's that instrumental reason that certain people have talked about before. yeah, exactly, Kadia. The 2000 internet atheist. Yes, Nef, it's always the time to return. We should do another symposium at some point and talk about Malazan stuff or other stuff. I don't know, Nif. People just discover your stuff, and there's not that much Malazan content coming out at the moment. So obviously you gain. That's the point. You gain subscribers by not doing anything. You lose subscribers by doing something, because once you actually post a new video, everyone who's subscribed to you realize that they have subscribed to you, and some people probably don't want to be subscribed to you anymore. It's one of those interesting byproducts of uploading videos on YouTube. It's like you upload a video and your subscriber number goes down. And then it usually goes up again, but mostly you always have that first bump when it goes down because someone realizes, oh God, I'm still subscribed to that dickhead. And then you know, do the thing. Yeah, of course, human language is unreliable. That's part of the problem. Like even like within the same language, and you know what do you mean by the same language, right? Like even if we're all speaking English here for the moment, right? There's so many ways of speaking English. The kind of vocabulary you're using, the kind of specific code you're speaking in, language is. I think the treacherous part of language is that we all assume that because we use the same words, we mean the same things, and that means we have understanding. And of course, we don't necessarily. We have some approximation of understanding, but not much more. And the whole idea of like a lot of the stuff we do online with rankings and tier rankings and numbers and shit like that is trying to codify language in a way that feels more objective because we have decided that objectivity or like you know, because it allows a mechanized processing of stuff is something we want, is desirable. And the question is obviously why, and that's kind of where things get dangerous in a lot of ways. I don't know, Price of Iron. I've read some very interesting contemporary fiction stuff that has world building that would have your your usual world building gurus on YouTube just like tearing out their remaining hair and screaming and rolling around on the floor with foam in front of their mouth and going like, "This is insane! You're not allowed to do that. You're not explaining this correctly." See, Daniel, I'm not sure if it's like, I think this is what smart people say. I think it's more um, that the internet has obviously democratized a lot of things. Anyone with a smartphone and internet connection can start a booktube channel, and that's great because everyone who reads books can talk about books and has and should talk about books because the idea is obviously that you read the thing and then you share your opinions with other people's opinions. The problem is, of course, that you need to develop a shared language. And one of the ways you use language is obviously by just using it without fully understanding it in the beginning and just, you know, using it. It's the same thing that children do when they grow, when they start talking, right? They just like copy and repeat what they hear other people say. And then over time, you realize what you're saying. The problem is, of course, that with stuff like social media, because of a lot of these like phrases like character work, world building, magic system, all the stuff, these phrases we use, we stick to them without actually ever going deeper because these are sort of categories that we then, you know, try to quantify with star ratings, numbers, and whatnot, to create, to find a way to compare books. And the idea of comparing books with the goal of saying this one is better than the other one is just a weird impulse in general, because like, why do we want to find out whether one book is better than the other one? What's the impulse behind that? And that's one of those questions that we rarely ask, because like, is, I don't know, is Moby Dick a better book than Winnie the Pooh? The answer is, what do you mean? And why do you care? Does one of these books have much better description of, you know, naval life and shipboard life? Yes. If in that regard, Moby Dick is definitely the better book. Does one of them have better poetry? yeah, that's probably Winnie the Pooh because it has the best poetry in the world. You know what I mean? My point is that it's very, very easy to just go like, this is the better book. And why do you want to say that one thing is better than another? Except for saying, I read the better thing, so I'm a better human. It's once you make general, universal statements about one thing being universally better than another thing, you're claiming you're starting to build a hierarchy, and no one except lobsters needs hierarchies, and that's one of those things that are so dangerous about this need to compare things and then associate yourself with the signs of superiority. And the signs of superiority is superiority, that's the word over here in book world, is of course having read the smart books, having read the popular books. Those are the two options. Either you read the smart books and then you jeer on everyone who reads Fourth Wing and enjoys it, or you go like, fuck you people over there with your postmodern literary fiction. I'm reading Fourth Wing and 10,000s, hundreds of thousands of people can't be wrong, right? And both are meant to sort of signal, allegiance to a group and claiming superiority through allegiance to that group. And that's not where you have like discourse that leads to actual, insight, to actual insight and understanding. But then again, the frameworks we use to have these conversations, booktube, book talk, bookstagram, Goodreads, they're not meant to create insight or further insight and discourse. They're built to create revenue for companies. And that's something of those things that is, we tend to forget oftentimes. I'm sad to say I don't have a flip phone anymore. I had one for a while, and then I gave it to a friend who broke her phone and needed a phone at the time, and that's the last I ever saw of that flip phone. I did, however, really love that flip phone. Just saying. Wait, which book are you talking about? Also, with the dipshits. I may have lost the plot there for a moment. Well, Winnie the Pooh is objectively the best novel ever written. I think I've said that before, but I think it's important to understand that that need to compare books rarely springs from like a need to gain knowledge or insight or understanding, but usually comes from a need to assert some form of superiority or dominance in a way. And that need is questionable because we don't actually have to do that, no matter what disgraced psychologists from Canada say. Moby Dick or Winnie the Pooh? Probably Winnie the Pooh, because he has those like balloons to fly, and I'm pretty sure Moby Dick can't fly. That's definitely true, Daniel. You're right there. See, here's the thing: is like I wrote music reviews for like a decade, and if you do it long enough, you kind of fall into this groove, and you just use the same phrases again and again. Because let's be real here for a moment. If you actually do a ton of reviews, most stuff is okay. And it's very difficult to write if quantity is one of the things you do, and if writing for Goodreads, you need to rack up enough reviews to stay relevant and shit like that. You talk about books that are, your 3.5 star books. they're not bad books by any stretch of the imagination, but it's very difficult to write an exciting review about that. So you fall back to these like standard phrases because you can fill up the text real quick. You get your word count up by doing the standard stuff, and you fall back to these phrases to keep that thing going. Because you need to talk about books that aren't, exciting, but they're also not shit. So what you're going to do? Just not write about them? But then again, maybe it's a self-published novel by someone you know. You don't want to disappoint those people, and they might even ask you, "Oh, hey, what happened to that book I sent you? That arc I sent you?" And you're like, "Shit, what am I going to do?" So you create these texts that are full of phrases that say basically nothing, and probably will not even do anything. I mean, I'm not a writer yet. I don't know how much actual reviews help selling books these days. My suspicion is that they do less and less. Like, who actually reads reviews of books before buying these books? At this point, I doubt it's that many people. Maybe in like a very small community online, but like the general like book sales, I don't think they're that much driven by actual reviews. What you need is have your name mentioned. In that regard, say, having someone on booktube, on bookstagram, on book talk about your book makes sense because it's a mention of your book title. But on Goodreads, when it says like 4.5 stars out of, whoever reads those 300 reviews to check out whether they like a book, it doesn't matter. The number matters up to a point, and that's it. And then it's just like, how many times do people encounter the title of your book somewhere on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Mastodon, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, possibly even on Facebook, wherever else? It's just about making sure people read or hear the name of your text of your book in enough times to actually go like, well, maybe I should actually check it out. But reviews don't matter anymore. Yeah, you're right. It's a bit like a piece of costume, and I don't think that most people do it on purpose or anything like that. It's just it's very easy to slip into that because it's comfortable, it's easy, it's a matter of convenience. Like that's why I don't want to come down too hard on people doing that. I just think yeah, it's a bit of a trap, and you kind of fall into that. I mean, most people writing reviews on Goodreads or whatever, or doing booktube videos, most people are not actually getting paid for this. So probably they have other stuff going and don't have time to actually fully write out, spend 2-3 days writing a review before they do anything with it. So you kind of, do that on the side, and then it's very easy to fall back into learned phrases in a lot of ways. And once you've heard stuff like world building and character work and magic system, oftentimes you're like, I guess I'll just put it in there. It's just interesting because for like heavy metal and rock music reviews, one of those terms, I have to say that because Britain said that he hates the term character work. So many people use the phrase guitar work. It's like, what's guitar work actually? But everyone's like, the guitar work on this record is excellent. Like, what are you talking about? You need to specify that. And no one ever does. Because the readers also kind of think they know what they mean, right? You're like, character work is good. I guess the characters are good, so I guess this is a good book. It's like, you haven't said anything about the actual details, but we've created this sort of semblance of meaning that is actually empty, and we still communicate something with it, just not anything of substance, I guess. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Price of Iron. I do very much appreciate your stance on the quality of books there. That is definitely something worth considering. Oh yeah, bye Joe. Sorry, I've been slow with the chat, and yeah, Joe's putting out a magazine very soon. It's called The Grim Dwarf. So everyone go and subscribe once it's up because it's going to be free, and it's going to have stories about a um, necromantic dwarf that punches people for a living. It's really cool. Oh yeah, right, Ben. I've heard about that. I mean, that's why it's called Winnie, right? The bear came from Winnipeg and was like a British soldier who took the bear with him when he went back to England. And there in the zoo, a Milner's son actually met the bear, and that's how that whole thing kind of came to pass. What Joe said there about the community, that's very much true. But I feel like even with the community, it then is very easy to fall back into that like sort of like rivalry with other groups. And you're like, yeah, I'm part of the Malazan fandom, and we're the smart kids because we have, all these complex books. And over there, those people, they're still reading Lord of the Rings, suckers. Yeah, exactly, Jared. That's the point. It's like it's very easy to just be repetitive because yeah, you got a quota to fill, and you got to how many times can you find different ways to say this is just good, solid? Well, I mean, Matthew, the point there is that we're already much. I mean, we're already there. You have all these special editions. You have subpress. You have broken binding. You have even these like book collection, like subscription boxes and stuff like that. We're already there, and a lot of times books are not only just something you buy to sort of build an identity, but they're also like object of speculation, which is for me at least even worse because there are people out there who actually want to read a book, but if all I can get is a limited hardcover with sprayed edges and all kinds of special stuff, and everyone buys that thing before I can get my hand on it, and then they're trying to sell it on eBay for like 10 times the price, that actually prevents people who want to actually read the book and do the thing that books or like get the text and engage with the text. It makes it more and more impossible for people to actually do that. And I recently watched a video somewhere talking about like how book talk and the way people are collecting more and more books and just doing tons of book hauls and unhauls is more and more becoming like very much like fast fashion and fashion halls of like the early 2010s and whatever. Just people are doing it with books now, so books are very much becoming the same thing. And when you look at say Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, that's sort of that kind of thing, right? It's very much produced by someone, from what I can tell, and I'm obviously not an expert on Fourth Wing, right? Rebecca Yaros, however you pronounce her name, right? She actually writes wrote normal like romance novels, and then she wrote like that romantasy thing with dragons, and it is very much targeted to be a book talk thing. And then they rush out the second book like within like 6 months to keep riding that hype for as long as possible. But you need to actually have the next book out and the next book out in 10 different editions so people can hold it up on book talk and do that thing. And yeah, that's very much just about the commodity of the shareable commodity that you buy to create an image, to tell everyone that you take part in that circulation of capital. In a way, it's it's very much the spectacle, according to Guy Debord, if that makes any sense. Hooray! Also, I'm very happy that you don't have COVID. That's I've read, I think, roughly 150 books this year. Yeah, that's another part also, that like if you want to be successful at the booktube game, it's very difficult to do that and do. I mean, it kind of sort of forces you into doing very specific things, and YouTube as a platform is designed to do these things. Like you log on on YouTube, and it tells you, your current video is doing badly because it's not like this and this and this, and it rams home all these ideas like, why not do this? It might actually make it much better, and so forth. And I think that's part of the issue there, exactly. That it does actively suppress discourse in a way. All right, there's another of these more comments below, and then I click on it, and then everything freezes. I hope I don't freeze for you when I press these buttons, but it's sometimes difficult. How many boosters do you actually have also? Because it's one of those fascinating things where I feel like, depending on where you live, you have like one booster or two boosters or three boosters, or Stalin did also love cowboy movies, from what I can tell, and other stuff. But maybe Stalin is not the best role model for most of us. Yeah, there's several people. So Behind the Bastards did an episode on the romance novel by Saddam Hussein, and the YouTube channel James Tullis, who knows fucking nothing about books, but he's very successful by dunking on badly written YA novels. Going back to that whole issue of doing what the algorithm wants. Did a talk about the novel as well. Apparently, Muammar Gaddafi did also write sci-fi stories, so there's that. Well, I mean, let's be fair that during the Soviet Union was huge, so, and had a large number of sort of states where they exported stuff to, so that makes sense that they print such a large part of books. I guess the question is always like, what kind of books did they print and what kind of books did they not print? I don't know if anyone ever wanted to read a romance novel written by Saddam, although it was published under a different author, so like everyone knew it was Saddam, but it was not. It didn't say Saddam on the title, and there were like two or three. He did write two or three novels. It's quite the thing. And he wrote those like near the end of his career and life, so that's not like something he did back in the 70s or so. No, this is like late 90s. Saddam Hussein decided that, yeah, fuck all of this stuff. I'm gonna write a romance novel. But sadly, I don't speak Arabic, so I would have to read the very amateurish, illegal English translation, and I know, not my kind of stuff, I suspect. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't even have holy dragons, so who cares? Um, yeah, I think like Daniel Green. I know it's there's a lot of people that like to dunk on Daniel Green. I think compared to a lot of other people on BookTube, I think he actually believes everything he says. He feels very natural and authentic to me in a way that Murphy Napier does as well. Um, I just think they're smart enough to just not talk about stuff where they may have controversial opinions, right? That's sort of the thing. Like the last time he did when's the last time Daniel Green did actually trash, or like how many times did he actually actively trash books in the last couple of years? Yeah, he did that for Terry Goodkind, but it's Terry Goodkind. You can get away with trashing Terry Goodkind. Having a controversial opinion on, I don't know, Brandon Sanderson would be very different, especially since he has worked with Brandon Sanderson. So maybe even if he doesn't actually like one of the secret projects or whatever, he'll probably not talk about it publicly and just like not say anything, but he'll probably not go out and praise it even if he hates it. I think there's a difference there. But if you make a response to that objectivity in art thing on Britain, I'm definitely going to watch it. I do have opinions on that stuff. Is he an anarchist? I don't know. His politics are very obscure to me. I've certainly watched a bunch of his stuff of late because for some reason YouTube has decided to push like 2 or 3 videos of his anytime I open my browser. I know he DNF'd Gardens of the Moon because it didn't actually have a good story according to him. See, here's the thing about One Piece. I have no idea about One Piece. I know it's very popular. I know it's a manga. I know it's an anime and like a live action series as well, right? I don't know anything about it. It's popular, of course, but then again, when's Philip Chase going to start talking about One Piece? Do we want to know? No, Britton, I'll not be hard on you. But I don't know. Like, I feel, as I like, I haven't watched his One Piece stuff. Maybe he just genuinely loves One Piece, and who am I to say no to that? I think it's sort of it can come across as like a calculated thing to have like an additional audience there, because obviously there's a limit to the number of people that will watch serious booktube content, or not serious, like stuff that is just about novels targeted at an adult audience. There's a limited audience. I don't think you can actually grow a channel doing that in a sincere manner. I don't think you can grow a channel beyond, say, 500,000 subscribers. I don't think that's possible. You need to branch out and do stuff. And the manga and anime crowd is definitely large and hangs out online in a way that a lot of readers just don't do that. And I mean, both Murphy and Daniel have done that, and with like a lot of success. Interestingly enough, I feel what's very interesting there is that Murphy does have like her main channel, Murphy Napier, where she does all kinds of stuff. And then she has a channel called Murphy Napier Reviews, where she actually puts reviews about books. And that's the smaller channel now, because yeah, no one cares about reviews anymore. So why even do that? Well, he's already doing like the manga stuff with Murphy, so but I don't know anything about manga, so I can't judge how high or lowbrow they are. Now, I've not talked to James. I just think his takes on books, his book takes are mostly shit. But I mean, I'm not taking anything away from his like leftist credentials. That's not the point here. Yeah, I've kind of stopped following most of BookTube at this point. It's one of those bad things, but it's like most booktubers don't talk about anything anything interesting. Like very few people talk about books that I'm interested in. When I find something, when whoever talks about, say, Jack Vance or Robert E. Howard or Clark Ashton Smith or what, like, classic stuff, or stuff that I'm currently interested in, then I obviously check that stuff out. But very few do, and I don't need people talking about giving me like the 10th kind of book haul, book unhaul, top 10 list of characters that wear hats or whatever else people are doing these days. Like, there's very few channels that have like the kind of discourse that I personally would love to have or like love to watch. You mean James Tullis's takes, why they suck? Well, I mean, mostly he does that thing that I personally just dislike, which is make content about dunking on shitty teenage YA books. It's like, why do that? You already know they're not made for you. And yes, there's probably a lot of trash in there, but it's like, it's this weird mean content that I just personally just don't like. It's why I don't want to, why I'm careful not to do too much of that whole, Wheel of Time stuff. Yeah, I was negative on Wheel of Time, but I thought I had like reasons to do that. But just going like, oh, and look how shitty the prose is, and look how bad this is. It's like, there's a meanness to that kind of content that I just personally don't like. And when it comes to what he deems good world building, what he deems good magic, and what he deems good whatever, I don't know. He just pulls out Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan too often for my taste. Yeah, exactly, Matthew. That's the point. It's like there's very little deeper analysis, and I'm just like, I don't know. It bothers me because we have this amazing tool. We can just all go and talk about books and what they do to us and what they make us feel and how we learn so much through them. And then we go online, we switch on the camera, it's like, this book made me understand so much about myself. And then you stop. It's like, what did it actually do? Don't say it did that and then never explain what that actually is. But no one ever does. And I'm like, we're missing a huge opportunity here. We're having this chance to talk about books. We're having this chance to help other people who are new to reading to gain knowledge and understanding. This is the best thing ever because it's basically free, sort of, almost, compared to other ways of getting education, getting information across. It could be so fucking good. And all we do is go like, well, here's the 10 best magic systems in one Brandon Sanderson novel. And I'm like, so what have we done here? It just feels like so many like missed opportunities and wasted chances. And I'm like, it's a shame. I hope that makes sense. Like I'm I'm obviously, I'm not a good educator or anything by any means, but if I read a book and I go out of that reading that book with then new knowledge, new understandings or whatever, I want to take these understandings and give them to, put them out there so other people can potentially have more understanding and knowledge and whatnot. And I think that's what we need to do if we want to have a chance of making this world in general like a better place. And so, it sounds cheesy, but it's why I love authors like, say, Stephen Erickson, or there's a bunch more obviously, but like people that write books to change the world. It's like whatever you do, you should want to change the world and make it a better place. You should not just go like, hey, world building good, because we already do that all the time. I think I did like a 25-minute video on Voyage to Arcturus. There's one video doing from the Center of Fantasy Studies or whatever on the centenary of Voyage to Arcturus. That is over an hour long, but I assume you have already seen that one. Yeah, I think you have an interesting point there, Kanya, because yes, it is very personal in a lot of cases. But then people do all kinds of other stuff that is incredibly personal on screen. Because let's face it, you create an audience not so much for your content, but for your personality. It's why some people have large audiences without doing much, and other people have very small audiences. I'm not a very personable guy, for example, but never mind. The point is, other people have like their cats or their dogs or their kids show up and do all of these things that are stuff of their personal life they put out there and don't think about it. But when it comes to like, so what did this book teach about me, about myself, then they're suddenly like very, very cautious. And I think that's once again part of what makes social media as a general, like, social media platform so interesting, because we do curate an image to the outside in a lot of ways, and presenting our dogs, cats, birds, fish, whatever else pets we have and stuff like that. That's a very specific picture we create. However, if we oftentimes when we read books, at least for me, when I read a book and I learn something, most of the time these are not things that are very positive. It's like, yeah, I realized I was a massive dick, and that's good, and that hopefully makes me a better person. But then I have to go and tell people, you know what, I think I was a massive dick. And people don't like to tell the world that they are massive dicks. Top 10 Gnostic allegories in science fiction. That's a good question. I would have to think hard which ones are actually would count as fully Gnostic. But then again, I mean, we already established that Voyage to Arcturus is one of those very unique, weird books. Here's the thing with the fascinating thing with the Marlon James stuff. So you told me, Ben, you told me to go and read Black Leopard, Red Wolf, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna try this. And then I found out it's a trilogy, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to wait. And then I saw that he actually had a brief history of 7 killings, and I'm like, I have heard that title before. And then I found out that I remember reading an old, like really old, right when it came out, like 2013, 14, whatever, blog post on Richard K. Morgan's website. When Richard K. Morgan did his sort of like, here's a bunch of books I've just recently read, and you should go and read these books as well. And he talked about Brief History of 7 Killings as well. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to try that one. And it turned out to be really, really good. I'm glad I did that. And despite, all the really transphobic stuff that Richard K. Morgan has said since, some of he's done a lot of recommendations that I really, really, learned a lot from. He recommended Jeff Vandermeer's Finch to me back then. He recommended Thomas Pynchon to me. I've learned a lot of interesting things. I mean, he recommended God's War by Cameron Hurley to me, which I absolutely loved. So I learned a lot back then. And yeah, I'm not so hot on his takes anymore, is my point. But a lot of the books that I learned, that I, found through his recommendations back in the day, I appreciate, in the same way that I did very much appreciate some of the takes of one George R. R. Martin when he did write his book recommendations on his website. He recommended Knights of Knives by Ken Esselmont, and he definitely made me read or start reading Robin Hobb back in the day. And I'm like, because he was like, yeah, well, I'm going to take a while writing this book. Well, why don't you go and read some Farseer in the meantime? Because I can tell you it's a really good book. And I'm like, well, George, I guess Winds of Winter will take a couple decades. I could just as well start reading Farseer, which is why I read Farseer back in, I don't know, 2009, 2010, something like that is when I read the Farseer trilogy. Yeah, there's great, and that's the point. Is I'll just talk to Matt about it. But there's great fantasy written before Tolkien. Of course, there's all the pulp stuff, and then the Weird Tale stuff. There's Blood in the Mist. There's the Worm of Roboros. There's Voyage to Arcturus, which may be sci-fi or fantasy. There's a lot of Lord Dunsany. Definitely, Queen, the King of Elfland's Daughter is wonderful stuff. There's your George MacDonald in the 19th century. There's interesting stuff out there that is well worth reading. I wish more people. Maybe I should make a video, because I don't know if anyone has talked about or talked in detail about Arthur Machen on BookTube yet. Arthur Machen is one of those weird authors and highly influential. Especially on Robert E. Howard and Clark Ashton Smith, and definitely H.P. Lovecraft. They're highly influenced by someone like Arthur Machen, the great god Pan. I think Jeroen, who's already gone for tonight, has read some Arthur Machen recently, and there's some really good stuff there. I love The Hill of Dreams. It's such a good story about this guy who walks through England, somewhere in England. He walks along and visits his family, and there's this old Roman fort on a hill above his parents' house, and then he kind of falls into like these dreams of the past and starts living in the past. It's a very specific kind of story that you see a lot of, like, sort of in this weird post Edgar Allan Poe, pre H.P. Lovecraft kind of era, and it's really good. I do really love those kind of stories, and no one talks about them for some reason. Hey Drew, how you doing? Yeah, I'm having a day. I recorded a wonderful video onto Green Angel Tower, and then my hard drive was full, so the rendering failed, and I have to re-render. So it'll be up tomorrow and not today, which is a shame. But I'm all right. So how are you doing? Yeah, I mean, Realm of the Elderlings is done, and I could. Yeah, I stopped after Life Ship back then, because I think when I finished with Life Ship, Tawny Man was not yet finished, and I didn't start, and then I got distracted and sidetracked by all kinds of stuff, and didn't go back to it after Life Ship. But this year everyone was starting to read Realm of the Elderlings, and I felt sort of like, well, I didn't want to be the guy who was like, yeah, I read it before it was cool. That was kind of Derry's job. So I kind of didn't do it this year. Maybe I'll read Realm of the Elderlings next year, although I already said I'll finally do the Sanderson thing, and that will be quite the undertaking. But that's the point. Is like popular series are often popular for a reason, and sometimes that reason is just that they're really good. I'm not a fan of just being like negative about something just because it's popular, because I think it helps to understand why people like something. They may still be wrong. And I think people who start reading, say, something like Wheel of Time in the year of our Lord 2023 and think it's a great book, they are wrong, because we have moved on since then. But I do understand why it got popular in the 90s. Yeah, of course, the Sanderson thing will not be good, but it's important. Because everyone talks about Sanderson, but everyone talks about like these unnecessary surface things. Like my Sanderson plan is, of course, I'm still going to do that other important Sanderson video that I've been dragging my feet on for like over half a year now. But I've put aside some academic texts on history of the Mormon Church, of the Latter-day Saints Church, and their connections to white supremacy and their connections to American politics, and how they try to influence different parts of the American media companies and like media environment and stuff like that. I'm going to read all of those books as well, academic books on the side, and then I'm going to read or reread in some cases the Sanderson stuff. So I'm actually able to point out the stuff where these things intersect, because whenever people go about Sanderson and go like, oh, but he ties to the Mormon Church and they hate gay people. I mean, yeah, that's true. And you might want to talk about that. And then that's obviously that one blog post he wrote and shit like that was like, no one ever actually goes like, how do Mormon beliefs and Mormon theology and ideology, how do those things actually show up within the text? And no one ever does that. And that's a shame, because I think it's important to do these kind of things, like the same way we look for like the Catholic influences in Tolkien, we should look for the Mormon influences in Sanderson, because that's where these things do damage. Because yeah, as much money as Brandon Sanderson makes, and as much money as he may donate to the Mormon Church, I don't think that's where the actual harm is, committed. The actual harm is created when people read these books and take in attitudes that are kind of built into these kind of stories, the same way that people take in attitudes when they read Lord of the Rings. Let's not forget that there's a very, very specific blood and soil attitude in the world building of Middle Earth that we should probably look into more. And I think that's why Sanderson is important. And Realm of the Elderlings, of course, I'll read it or reread it in parts. Yeah, that does not surprise me. Price of Iron. I mean, isn't it like in Mistborn 2 when they start democracy and that doesn't work, so they end up reinstituting some form of monarchy as well? These are repeating elements of Sanderson's stories, and I think it's important to actually point out how they kind of connect to certain other things, and no one ever does that, because it's so much easier to go like, oh, but the Mormons hate the gays, and I'm like, yeah, but you might want to actually look how that actually shows up in the text. Well, Drew, I hope despite the in-laws, you had a good Thanksgiving. That's definitely something I completely forgot about, like the Thanksgiving thing for some reason. So yeah. Hey, Ron. Glad to see you. Yeah. There's something about that. No one does anything about him. There's an interesting thing with Sanderson. So I watched that video that he did with Daniel Green a couple of days ago, and it's super interesting because Sanderson's sort of takes on the publishing industry, they are spot on, and he's He's pointing out all the problems, and then he always stops from making that, taking that final important step. It's like, yeah, there's good people working at Amazon. They love books and stuff, but it's the system of Amazon that does this. Like, no, Brandon, it's not the system of Amazon that does this. It's the system, period. And you might want to think about what we could do about the system. But he never takes that final step. He recognizes all the problems and then just goes like, and shows how you can still sort of maybe get by within this broken system. But the idea that we should probably just do something about the system just never crosses his mind. Definitely doesn't cross his lips, though. And that's just really interesting to me. Why are you dead, also? Also? Sorry, gotta do the thing where I go back and... The truth, also. The truth is what you walked into. The Mormons hate the gays. Well, I mean, it's slightly more nuanced, but... Have you listened to some of the Let's Be Critical About Sanderson stuff? That's exactly what it kind of boils down to. And I'm like, yeah, I know, man. There's more to it. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the point. Like, there's a lot of bad things happening in Sanderson books, and people just kind of shrug and go like, oh, but have you looked at the amazing magic system? It's like... Yeah, exactly. Oh, so that's kind of the problem there. It's like someone needs to examine that, and no one ever does because they kind of move somewhere else. Yes, I have read Lolita before a while ago. It's a very interesting book. It's a very good book. I think Nabokov is a good writer. I think where people go wrong is like, hey, the shit happening in this book is fucked up. You should hate this book. It's like, no, the point is that you realize that it's fucked up and that you understand that it's wrong. You're not supposed to like the character. It's one of those interesting things that I recently had that conversation with someone else, like people praising or a lot of people liking or appreciating what Mark Lawrence does with Jorg as a main character in the Broken Empire trilogy. And then they go and despise what Gene Wolfe does with Severian and Book of the New Sun. It's like, I can't read this book. The character is so it's so terrible. I'm like, yeah. So why do you think you're supposed to like that guy? You kind of got it when Mark Lawrence does York, and you're like, yeah, well, you're not supposed to like York, right? I mean, yeah, but whoever said that you're supposed to like that guy? It's like, you're not supposed to like Humphrey, right? Humphreys. That's not the point. You're supposed to dislike him and look at the mechanisms of justification and self-justification going on there. That's the point. It's an important book. It's not a fun book. And in the way that a lot of contemporary, say, booktube, book talk, and whatnot, goes for very literal readings, these are not necessarily the approach that helps with understanding or liking whatever else, stuff like Nabokov in general. Yeah, I think the main criticism I have with the whole, like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I don't like about Broken Empires. Like, I do like what Mark Lawrence is trying to do. I think he's too ham-fisted about it. I like the idea. I like the concept. I think he's too ham-fisted or too inexperienced a writer at this point in his career to actually do that idea, that larger idea, justice, which is, understandable. It's why I said I will not be able to write a good book, because I don't think I'll be able to actually do any of the things that I, as a reader, would find interesting just as a writer. I'm just not good enough. And I think it's sort of something that you can see with Broken Empire, where it's like, yeah, he's got some really good ideas, and the idea of, the whole concept of someone trying to live up to his parents' expectations in the competition with a sibling. All of these things are really, really important topics, something that not that much fantasy actually deals with. I love all of those aspects, but then he just goes like, okay, I gotta make this very clear by, I don't know, having him rape 14-year-old, having a 14-year-old rape kids in the first chapter to make sure that you really hate the guy, so I can actually then tell you that you need to love him. And it's like, it just feels, yeah, it's once again that edgy 2000s teenager kind of thing. It's the kind of thing I would have written when I was 15 or 16 and felt I was doing something really deep, but I had to lay it on real thick to make sure that people understand how smart I am by doing the thing that I'm doing right here. And yeah, that doesn't work for me anymore. Humbert, yeah, that's, I think, as I said, like, Ron, like, Lolita is a very important book. It makes sense to read that. Just don't take it literally, and be aware of the fact that you're supposed to hate the guy. Yeah, exactly, Matthew. That's the point. It's like, it confuses people, and York does not confuse, because York is so in your face that it's very, very difficult to not get the point. And it's a danger, I think, sometimes when when you try to do literal readings of a lot of things. Yeah, exactly. Severian tries to be very nice, and but also very smart. And I mean, he knows everything there is to know about women. It's a very fascinating book. I do love the subtleties in Book of the New Sun, but I can understand why people don't like it. I just think it's important when people go like, "Well, Book of the Broken Empire is great, and Book of the New Sun is bad." And I'm like, why? Yeah, Pricer. I remember that part, and then it turns out that the guy who was always super humble and whatnot is the actual main character and the savior of everyone. And God, now Mistborn was not a good read when I read for the first time. But hey, the magic system is so cool, and you can fly around and shit. Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, all first-person narrators are always unreliable, even when they tell you that they have perfect recollection and perfect memory. The Wizard Knight by Wolf is really good. I really enjoyed it. It's got some, Norse mythology. It's got some really cool Arthurian bits and pieces in there. It also has both a talking cat and a talking dog, and they hate each other. It's really funny. And I keep forgetting the name of the dog's name. Is it Griff? Something like Griff. The Land Across does not suck. It's just very, very different. It reminds me a bit of The City and the City by China Mieville. Gilf, that's the name, right? Yeah, Gilf the dog. And the cat is Grimalkin or some variation on Grimalkin. It's really cool. Yeah, oh, so that's a good reason. Yeah, I mean, I think the Land Across is weird, but if you've ever been in like in a part of Eastern Europe, it does feel very realistic in weird ways, in this like post-communist Eastern Europe way. Oh yeah, yeah. That's a good point, Matthew. That's yeah, Gilf is very much like what's his name, the big hunting dog. Yeah, I don't know. I keep forgetting the name, but he. I know what you mean. The dog in Baron and Luthien. Um, yeah, there's a parallel there. Although Gilf gets to run around on the higher plane and hang out with the Allfather. I think that weird mix-up of Norse religion and Christianity is really fascinating in Wizard Knight. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that yes, Baron's dog is an influence there because well, we know that Gene Wolfe was a huge fan of Tolkien and even wrote a letter to Tolkien and got a letter back from Tolkien, and I'm pretty sure that that was a deliberate sort of influence there. Huan, that's the name, yes. Huan the Hound, the faithful. Hey Teddy, how you doing? And yes, yes, Britain, he did actually help invent the Pringles machine, which is one of those really funny things that never stops amazing me that Gene Wolfe is the guy on the Pringles logo. Like the Pringles logo is a stylized like image inspired by the face of of Gene Wolfe because he helped invent the machine that stamps out the Pringles chips. It's just like. All right, everybody, we need to make a decision here because it's late, and the question is: should we go for, I don't know, me having one final beer, or do you guys feel tired and want to do serious things like, I don't know, sleep or deal with family or do whatever you do on a Saturday, which I don't know what that is because I'm not a role model here. Yeah, right, Teddy. Once you get to the Nordic vibe and the stuff on the glaciers, and you have those settlers slowly encroaching on the native area, it's a really good book. It just takes a while to get going. Yeah, well, mustaches are in general a really good thing, which is, why so many of Cam Esselman's characters do have, in fact, mustaches. You can't help thinking that that idea of the turning potatoes into gold basically was inspired by his Pringles job. Did he maybe have one in the 70s when he did work for Pringles? I don't know. All right, here's what we'll do. I'll get myself another beer, so you need to amuse yourselves by I don't know, talking to each other for a minute and a half while I find myself another beer, and I'll be back in, as I said, a minute or two with a fresh beer, and then we'll have one more conversation about beer, and well, while I have my final beer, and then I'll go to bed because I have to read The Yellow Wallpaper tomorrow. And if you've not ever read that one before, it's not a happy story, but you should go and read it. It's a feminist classic and very depressing. Um, I hope I sold that right. I did sell that really well, right? Please tell me I sold it right. Well, I'm mostly back with one fresh final beer before I end this. Oh yeah, Harpist in the Wind. That's a really good one. I mean, the whole Harpist, the Riddle Master trilogy is great. Yeah, the player of games. That's good also, because we're gonna have our conversation real soon. And should you want to join us for the next culture conversation. We usually have them. I mean, we have them on the Unabridged Burners Discord. We just hang out. It's not recorded, so you can just jump in and talk about the book. All right. I don't know. Kyle has really badass mustache. No, not a badass mustache. I think also, if we assume that Kyle is sort of Native American coded in his appearance, I assume he'll have like one of those very thin mustaches, I guess. Maybe. Does that make sense? Anyway, for just stumbling into your conversation about the books that you're reading. But Ron, is this your first time reading the Riddle Master trilogy, or are you rereading it? If you say Vance with a touch of Pratchett, I need to check this out because this sounds very much like something I might sort of enjoy. But here's the thing: I'm trying to find out what Ron said about Harpist in the Wind. But if you have not read the Riddle Master trilogy by Patricia McKillip, you should do so. It's another one of those classics. I think it's like 70s. I might be mistaken. Patricia McKillip died last year. I think last year. She like very recently, but her Riddle Master and the Forgotten Beasts of Eld are well worth reading. Especially, as I said, I mean, I personally really appreciated the Riddle Master stuff. It's really good. It has a weird sort of Christian theme to it as well, but it's done fairly well, and it has a very unique style to it that I did really enjoy when I read it. Which it's also been like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. Ooh, Robert Silverberg is one of those people. I've never read anything by Silverberg. I've always encountered him as editing kind of collections of short stories, but I've never read anything of Silverberg's myself. Probably should change that, but see, here's the thing. I've always wanted to read Wizard of the Pigeons, and it's there's an audiobook, and it's region locked. It's so fucked up because Liam from Liam's Lyceum did send me the audiobook as a gift on Audible. And when I tried to redeem it, it just turned into store credit because I couldn't actually get it from where I'm living. And it's, yeah, I'll raise that crossbone skull flag very soon, I guess, because I want to get that book. I do appreciate the Iliad for a lot of stuff that it does, though, Matthew. I think the Odyssey is easier to get into. Um, and I don't know if you've ever read the things that say Adorno and Horkheimer say about both in Dialectics of Enlightenment, or if you've looked at what someone like Julian Jaynes says about the Iliad and the Odyssey, come to think about it, in his Origins of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. So it's interesting to compare the two texts, and of course, the Iliad is that book where everyone's like, well, it's about Achilles, right? It's like, no, it's about Hector. The Iliad is actually the story of Hector. It's not about Achilles. It's just that we all like him because someone decided long ago that he was gay, and since then we've all been waiting for retellings that make it very explicit that he's gay, because apparently we can't just live with the fact, with subtext. Ah, 78, 79. Yeah, yeah, that's the point. It's like they are old, but I do really like the riddle master stuff. The idea of having like riddle masters as a job, sort of like learning how to do the riddles, is just really cool. It has this sort of weird um, folklore vibe to it that some of the Poole Anderson Broken Sword, Three Hearts and Three Lions kind of vibe in a way, if that makes any sense. Which are also books that you all should go and read, because those are really good books and highly influential. Eld is good, yeah. Eld is good. As I said, like for some reason, I did like the Riddle Master. Possibly it's because there's a song called "The Riddle Master" by Manila Road, which is one of my favorite bands of all time. But I might be influenced by those kind of connections. Just saying. Which I know is not a good reason, but it's the kind of reasons I that work on me. Gotta wait for the chat to catch up with me, because yeah, really need to find a way to make this work smoother with the screen reader, because this is very annoying when I'm go like, well, you gotta wait for this to catch up, and I'm like, why? What have I done to you, computer? And the answer is nothing. Now, this should be it. Hopefully? Hopefully? Motherfucker. This is weird. Now you should now you should be able to hear me again, hopefully. It kind of did something weird. It kicked me out and then it I don't know. Sorry about that. Technology sucks and I have a computer that is too old and too slow. Just like me. Sorry, sorry about that. I have no idea when I stopped being there. I'll just try to sort of take things back again from wherever we were when we were. Yeah, but it turns out that I have a very old and slow computer, and that means that I need to find a way to make things not freeze up, and it kind of just kicked me out for whatever reason. Which, I don't know. Ha! Technology can't keep me back. Anyway, I'll just try to go back and chat without it freezing up to. I know I said something and then I kind of forgot. I don't know when I froze up fully, so I'm trying to figure that one out to get back. But maybe I shouldn't do that because otherwise it'll freeze up again, and we don't want that, do we? Maybe I should just give it up. I don't know because my computer. Here it has. It is talking to me again. I'm sorry about that. I'll just stick to this here. Great, I could help you there, Matthew. That's a good thing. It was all planned, right? Anyone have an idea when I froze up so I can kind of resume there? What's got heathen be? What's got being a heathen to do with that? Yeah, as I said, I need to find a new way to actually get that whole thing solved. But you know, it's so difficult to follow this. Anyway, what do you mean we technically are? I'm a baptized Catholic. I haven't been to church for a while though. um, so yeah, I'm trying to figure out where I was earlier, but as I said, like the main issue with the audiobooks for Robin Hobb is that they're different narrators, and some of them have weird accents, and I don't know. I never had an issue with them, but everyone loves to shit on them, which kind of annoys me because I'm pretty sure those people got paid minimum wage, if at all, and it's not their fault. So I don't know. Mostly, I'm happy they actually exist. There's some books where we don't have audio, and I'd rather have I'd rather have Farseer audio than Wars of Light and Shadow audio, which is no audio. Oh, I'm not religious, Britain. I'm not religious. I just got baptized Catholic because my family is Catholic, and I have a healthy respect for religion. I think it's important to understand that religion is more than the 2000s atheist approach of being, oh, religion is that crutch that less intelligent people need to make sense of the universe because there is no meaning and all we do is what we do to ourselves, and we have to be smart and brave to understand that. And the lesser people out there, the sheep, so to speak, they need religion as a crutch. And I was like, no, that's not how that works. And there's a lot of people take that road, and I don't appreciate that, but I think religion has done a lot of good and terrible things, and faith is just one framework that a lot of people use to understand the world, and it deserves to be taken seriously, even if you disagree with it. And I think that's sort of where I, you know, have issues with a lot of these, more edgy atheist stuff. Yeah, of course there are, Matthew. That shit never goes away. Yes, Ori, that's a problem. I agree. I think like having people decide to join a religion when they're, adult would be a better way to do that. And organized religion definitely does cause a shit ton of harm, as do all kind of, these kind of structures. Um, yes, Matthew, I do speed some of them up. It kind of depends. There's especially like older audiobooks sometimes are very, very slow. There's stuff like recorded in the 80s that is incredibly slow, and you need to kind of speed that up. There's other narrators where I'm like, yeah, no, it's fine. And I'm also trying to not do it too much because I think there's this general trend that we have to speed up everything, to just cram in more information as much as possible all the time. It's like, how many of you do actually speed up YouTube videos? I feel like probably most of you do to some extent. And I think that's part of the problem. It's like we tend to do that over time a lot. The question is like, at what point do we actually miss something? Because we're basically reducing something that is a performance to just the bare bones information, the words. I don't know how to deal with that in general, but I do definitely speed up some narrators, some more, some other, some less. As I said, like some stuff, for example, like when it comes to nonfiction, there's a lot of like older nonfiction that is incredibly slow. If you try to read, and I highly recommend you go and read it, probably in print. A Cadillac Desert by Mark Reisner. It's an incredibly important book, powerful technique book about water in and the problem with water in the southwest of America, of the United States. But the narration is incredibly slow because it's an older narration and so forth. And it's a nonfiction book, so the performance doesn't really matter that much. That one I did speed up quite a bit because, but you should still, like, if you're interested in the current like issues of water along the Colorado River and all these things, like the slowly drying up water reservoirs in both in Nevada and around that area in Arizona. You should go and read that book, Cadillac Desert. It's really good. And then you should go and read The Water Knife by Paolo Bacigalupi for like a science fiction or near future take on the whole issue that is probably more engaging than the Reisner book, but it's definitely both are worth reading. See here, Teddy. That's the point. It's like I'd love to continue with Aspect Emperor, but it's sort of the same issue I have with as with Wizard of the Pigeons, which I really want to read. I need to hoist that skull and crossbones flag for it because for weird region lock reasons, I can only get the final book of those four Aspect Emperor books in a legal way. For anything else, I need to head to the Spanish main of data, if that makes any sense. Yeah, and that's totally understandable to if you grow up in like a very conservative, sexist, or generally restrictive religious environment to rebel against that and become that edgy atheist. It totally makes sense. And as Ori said, um, being inducted and pushed into a religion as a child that is not able to make any decisions is kind of fucked up. But I can't take. I think while I'm not religious, I think it's important to understand that people that are sincere in their faith are not necessarily doing that because they're less intelligent than atheists. I think there's a different place there. There's like that draws some people to believing in some form of you know some form of higher being, creator, or whatever you want to call it. Right? There's something going on like a more emotional, intuitive level. It doesn't have anything to do with like just your intelligence. It's much more a feeling than it is an actual thinking. Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Like things have generally sped up when it comes to like how we um use information, how we send information along, how we purvey information. Everything has sped up insanely, and with audiobooks it's the same. Yeah, Ron, but have you read Cadillac Desert? Because that one's like from the 80s. I think the original Cadillac Desert is from the 80s, and he kind of goes back all the way to like the whole history of damming some rivers and using them to build turbines and shit like that. It's a really good read. Basically, I'm almost sure that you've read Cadillac Desert as well. You seem like the kind of person who has read it or would be very interested in it. But that's the point, Teddy. There's you know it's not just peace of mind and comfort. There's something else there. It's like, and that's kind of where it kind of gets so tricky when you can go down that like weird atheist line, like internet edgy atheist line, where go like, yeah, but I'm strong enough. I don't need peace of mind and comfort. I can face the darkness of the universe myself. And it's like, yes, that may be part of it, but it's not all. There's something else there, and I think it's important to understand that and take that seriously, and not just use it to put people down. Their actions can still be wrong and criticized and so forth. Don't get me wrong. It's like a lot of stuff with religion is, and especially organized religion, is fucked up. But that feeling that there's something else there, some sort of like larger meaning or whatever, I don't think you can just use that as like a lack of intellectual rigor or something. I don't think that's the appropriate argument there, if that makes any sense. I don't know, the sublime kind of depends on what you mean by the sublime. If it's more like Edmund Burke style of sublime, then no. Okay, yeah, I'll check that one out, Ron. But I think you definitely appreciate what Reisner does with Cadillac Desert. He kind of covers the whole thing, like from the 1920s onwards, all the way to like with their like the second edition and whatnot, all the way to the 90s, and how it's kind of really terrible. I'm not a huge fan of Hitchens. I definitely am not. I'm definitely not a fan of Dawkins. I think Daniel Dennett is worth reading in general. Um, we don't need to even start talking about Harrison. Like those people kind of went like very weird ways because they come from all kinds of obscure places. Hitchens is okay. I said like Dennett is worth reading because he's got something to say as a sincere, like actual philosopher in a lot of ways that goes beyond religion bad. Dawkins Dawkins should have stayed in biology. The Selfish Gene is a book that is definitely worth reading. Anything after that is just, I don't know, not good. And there's people that because they are really good at one specific thing kind of start thinking that they're good at everything and really want that approval, that public approval. And Dawkins fell into that hole badly. He's not as ridiculous as Jordan Peterson, but it kind of goes down a similar sort of like trajectory, right? It's like people start appreciating or start paying attention to him because he's already considered smart in a specific field. He's got that privilege of title and grades and shit like that, and then he goes from there and does ever more ridiculous things just to keep that applause coming because they people like that kind of get addicted to that kind of applause, and that leads into that like very specific sort of like codependent spiral of radicalization in a way. But that's an interesting question, Ron. Have you read either Wind Up Girl or Water Knife by Bajigalupi? Because I think those might interest you as well. I mean, obviously. Oh, interesting. See, here's the thing, Ori. Also tells me to read the Craft books by Gladstone, and yeah, either they're region locked or they don't exist in audio, and I haven't tried to find or ebooks yet. The only Gladstone I definitely can get is obviously This Is How You Lose the Time War, which I probably should read at some point. Yeah, I thought you might have read Barjigalupi, Ron, because I wish he would write more stuff or be faster because I found both Wind Up Girl and Water Knife really good. I really also enjoyed his the Tangled Lands short story collection with what's his name, Tobias Buckell. Really interesting. It's if you like weird, slightly alchemy focused fantasy that is also very much about climate change and stuff like that. Interesting. Then The Tangled Lands, which is a collection of 4 short stories, 2 by Buckell and 2 by Bajigalupi. Yeah, really interesting stuff. The Alchemist, The Executionist, and I keep forgetting what the other 2 are. But they're really interesting and unique in a lot of ways. With this country, like the world, like it's slowly covered by getting covered by these brambles or plants whenever someone uses magic. And it's very much about that. and people obviously secretly use magic, and the elites keep using magic, and everyone else is forbidden from using magic and getting executed for using magic. But the rich and powerful still use magic, and that still kind of makes the problem go get worse and worse. So the metaphor is not exactly subtle, but it's still good. Yeah, right, Ori. I remember that because I bought it as when it was just The Alchemist and The Executionist. I have that version, and then I have the second one with the other two stories as well. But I do both. I think the two new stories are also good, but I especially really liked the first two, especially the Executionist. I really appreciate. The Alchemist is also really good. No, I have not read any John Crowley. I may have read some Aleister Crowley, but that's a different thing. Yeah, but I'd be interested to see if Bacall and Bajigalupi will return to the Tangled Lands later. But as I said, like I think the Alchemist as a story, establishing the whole thing, and the Executionists, they're like the main stories. Oh, although there's one of the news stories about the guy that's hired to create that armor and stuff. I keep forgetting what it's called. That one was really good as well. Yeah, right. Go read the Tangled Lands. They're actually good. I just like what both Bacall has like a new collection of stories. Like he's in this anthology of Caribbean speculative fiction stuff now. I was trying to find out where if I can get like a hold of that one because it sounds really interesting. But yeah, um, I'll check out the Abbey book that you mentioned. And yeah, I mean, if you've read, the Water Knife, you kind of know where Cadillac Desert is going. It just was like for me from the outside, it was like a very comprehensive look at like 100 years of America getting it very, very wrong, and then you have people these years, like the last 2 years, going like, "Oh, there is no water in the Colorado River. Where did that? How did that happen?" I was like, "Well, I don't know. I feel like some people have known that for a long time." You might want to check with those people. Yeah, right. Yeah, I've been following him on both on Blue Sky and on Twitter or whatever, and he's definitely very much struggling with a lot of stuff, but he seems to be on the way back, which is good. And I hope that he'll get get back to writing more. And obviously, generally, even if he doesn't get back to writing, I just hope he gets his health back because long COVID is really bad. And it's easy for those of us who are not affected by it to go like, oh, long COVID, right? And it's as always acceptance for chronic illnesses that are hard to observe from the outside. Yeah, we're not good at accepting these kind of weaknesses in general, whether it's mental health or sort of other or internal chronic illnesses that are hard to see or judge by amateurs from the outside. And I think that's part of the problem with COVID. With long COVID, of course, it's also the fact that it's even difficult to completely quantify it for most, like for a lot of people from like with a medical background, from what I can tell. But it's still important to understand that it's yeah, it's real and it sucks. Yeah, I was. Um, yeah, I didn't reread the Tangled Land, like the first two books, two stories, and the new one last year. I think I did. I think I did make a video about it. Maybe that was like a year before. I'm losing track of time. That's my point. But I definitely did reread both Wind Up Girl and Water Knife last year, and found both of them held up really well. There's bits and pieces in Wind Up Girl that are obviously kind of hard to read and might upset some people, but I think it's still like a very powerful book in what it does and how it does these things. So I'd be very interested to see what an adult science fiction novel by Paolo Bacigalupi would look in the year 2023 or 24, probably. So I'm you know hoping that something new will come from Bacigalupi at some point, because he's always been the kind of author that when he writes an adult science fiction novel does not shy away from just really, really, going where it hurts, I guess. And yeah, mental health issues definitely suck. That's sure. And they will keep on sucking, because while we have reached the point where everyone goes like, well, mental health, a lot of people still go at the end of the day, yeah, but we can solve most of the mental health issues by just being more taking care of ourselves and doing some yoga and shit like that. It's like, no, that's if you have like severe like mental health issues, that's not how that works. They're actually, they're chronic illnesses, and they keep you back in ways that go beyond something you can solve by drinking tea and doing yoga. But that's the internet. Oh, he did. Which one are you talking about, Ron? Because I know he wrote this thing that I kind of thought was like YA, the Truth Factory. Was it called the Truth Factory? Something like that. Truth Factory, Life Factory, one of those something factory stuff. And but it sounded like it was more like a YA novel. But as always, I just like sort of whenever I remember, check what like authors I appreciate have done in the last, I don't know, couple of years since I last checked on them. And like so many of the authors I'm interested, like booktube definitely didn't talk about a new Paolo Bacigalupi novel. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, man. I didn't want to make you laugh. I mean, obviously I want, because at heart I'm a comedian, right? And no, but I think there is that idea that we can solve these things from ourselves, from within ourselves, if we just pay attention to ourselves. And there's a word for it, which I can't remember right now, because the English language is actually a difficult language sometimes. And it kind of, what it does kind of is put the onus back on the people suffering from like mental health issues. And like, yeah, but you wouldn't blame someone with a broken arm for not doing like deadlifts, right? You wouldn't do that. It's like, yeah, but mental health, we still have this impulse, but you can fix yourself. It's like, no, you can't. Some things need external help, and that shit takes time. Yeah, the Doubt Factory. That's the one. Yes, Doubt Factory, Truth Factory, Life Factory, something like that. Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. Um, yeah, I was hoping for something new, but there's definitely enough books out there to be read. So there's maybe I shouldn't be too greedy, I guess. All right, guys, it's midnight, and I'm ending that final beer. Um, I'll retreat into the solitude of my cave upon the lonely mountain, so I can, read Charlotte Poliquin's Gilman. Um, I would urge those of you who have not yet done so to go and read Hild and Meanwood by Nicola Griffith, because we'll have a live stream with Nicola Griffith coming up very, very soon. It'll be an hour later than my usual live streams, because Nicola has asked for it to be late enough for her to also have beer on stream. So we'll have, a sit down, drink some beers, talk about Hild and Meanwood. And since it's a live stream, it would be really cool if, a lot of people show up and take the opportunity, take the chance to actually ask her questions. And, you know, so add Hild and Meanwood to your to your TBRs if you haven't done so yet. Because I think it might be it will be well worth it. I'm sure it'll be really interesting. I'll just I still need to confirm the exact date, but it'll probably happen in the next, I don't know, two weeks or so. And yeah, good night, everyone. I hope you have like a good weekend. And yeah, uh, please show up when we do the live stream. It would be really, really awkward if like no one shows up. And I'm pretty sure it'll be awesome. Uh, Nicola Griffith seems to be a very cool person, and she has a lot to say. I can tell you that. So I don't know. Go read some Hilden Meanwood. They're insanely good novels, anyway. 2 weeks? I don't know. All right. As I said, thanks for actually showing up. This was awesome. Sorry for the technical difficulties. One of these days, I'll be rich enough to actually afford a new, better computer, so these things don't happen anymore. And yeah, have a great day, and cheers.